What is expected from IT is more than ever. The budget, of course, hasn't been adjusted to support that. Your control has probably diminished. This is a replaying story. We saw it in the days of mini computers. We saw it in the days of laptops and PCs. We see it today in the day of consumerized IT. And so how do you best manage that? And part of the problem is the whole risk associated with it. There's a huge risk component that is growing as you lose more control as the CIO and the things you're called on to do grow. So for instance, if someone in your enterprise comes to you and says, I want a mobile app, and you say no, that's probably not the end of the conversation. They're probably going to get that mobile app one way or another. And whether you're involved or not, you've already had your shot from their perspective, and they're going to go off and make it happen. And all of the things you know about regulations and compliance and security and all of those kinds of things are a secondary concern for the business owner who's simply trying to get a mobile app or something on the iWatch or whatever it may be. And so somehow we have to figure out a way to kind of stem that. And so it's really about how do you put yourself in a position where you can manage that risk for the business in your role as the CIO. How do you manage that role for the business while at the same time enabling the places that they want to go? One of IT's largest costs, if they're not their largest cost, is the data center proper. And of that cost, labor is the biggest contributor to that, which puts us in a tough spot from a CIO's perspective, dealing in a flat budget situation. Where am I going to find the money to do the new projects? 2/3 of the IT spend has been about the status quo. One way or another, it's about running the business as opposed to building the business or innovation, and that's got to shift. We need to minimize what we're spending on the status quo, and we need to maximize what we can do to kind of enable the business. But the point is, it's all about where you spend your money. Your budget's not going to grow, so how do we get smarter about the spend and use the entire menu of things available to us? And what you want is some kind of uniform infrastructure that allows you to use cloud assets when it makes sense to use cloud assets, use close-in assets when it makes sense to use close-in assets, use assets in your own brick and mortar when it makes sense to do that. This is a thing I call proactive reaction, kind of an oxymoron, but the point is you need to be thinking all the time about what might happen, what should I be able to do, and what are my options, and then what if it doesn't work out? How do I unwind that quickly and get us back to a space where we can operate? Standards. So standards have been the bane of IT for years. We've used standards as a weapon to stop people from doing things we didn't want them to do. But standards can be your friend. Standards are the way you minimize cost. If you get commonality in operating systems or commonality in hardware platforms, and I'm not talking about vendors, I'm talking about architectures, you can get the economies of scale that you're looking for and at the same time deliver savings to the business and deliver service to the business. Right hosting, I kind of talked about that in the context of where in the cloud do you want to be, how far down in the fog are you going to be. You ought to be in a position that you can deploy wherever it makes sense. You need to be able to deploy across a spectrum of places, but manage them in a consistent way and automate them in a consistent way. For me, elastic infrastructure is the way to do this. It's the enabler. It's the way we've been building our systems now for about 4 years. It was a very deliberate set of changes. We changed our legacy systems to get into the Fabric game, and we've deployed open systems with Fabric infrastructure as well to give you elasticity, both in your enterprise, but also to let you burst out to different cloud providers as it makes sense. I met this gentleman last night, interesting character, and there's a couple of nuggets that I think apply to all of us. So say yes to everything. Adopt a position as the CIO that you say yes to everything. You don't start at no. Do what you're good at. Recognize what your IT shop can do well and what they can't do well, and exploit that. Make your goals easier. A classic. Listen to the problem that you're getting, and figure out what good enough is. And figure out that early. I get tarred and feathered over that one on a regular basis, but my perspective is, you, the customer, is not going to pay for anything beyond good enough. So what I'm going to leave you with is really a call to action. Get out of the bureaucracy and the policing business and become the innovator. Go to them with ideas. You see these things largely before your customer does. You ought to be bringing the, hey, what do you think of this, is to them. And then finally, get out of the history business and get into the vision business. You don't have to explain why you've always done things some way. Internally, your organization, you ought to be encouraging a little bit of revolution and getting people to question why they do things the way they do things.